Good evening, Cabalites. I see you're back for another Frightday Night special. As you can see, this one is special indeed. Once again, I put out a poll on Twitter, but it seems that this time you were a bit undecided. So now I get to pick this week's poison. Oh, how dreadfully delightful. So let's see what we've got in the Nerdnomicon, shall we? Ooh, this looks rather good. Listening to a spectacularly scary story has always been a terrifying treat, but it seems that the appalling art of crafting a creepy chronicle has recently seen more and more trying their hands at horror writing. Rightfully fortunate for us, as it leaves all the creepypastas we could ever want. So check to make sure the windows and doors are all locked. Turn on all the lights and get comfy. We're going to be looking at 3 chilling creepypastas. Have you ever had an unknown caller and not picked up the phone? Well, you might be doing yourself a disservice. When I received the first phone call, I was just moments away from stepping onto a plane when my phone suddenly vibrated and showed an unknown number. I had never heard the ringtone before and didn't remember setting it. While normally I would not have answered, I was expecting a call from a job to which I'd applied. So, hoping that this was good news, I took a deep breath and I answered it.
Don't get on the plane. Don't get on the plane. Don't get on the plane.
My blood instantly ran cold. I'd always had a fear of air travel, but something about this call, this voice, it sent a chill down my spine. At that moment, I decided I wouldn't be getting on that flight today. I turned around and walked off into the food court. Maybe I'd reschedule for later. As I sat in the coffee shop and slowly sipped my drink, suddenly, all of the TVs lit up. A news headline displaying the wreckage of a plane and a flight number. The exact one that I should have been on. No survivors. Not a single one. I spoke with the authorities and handed them my phone to examine, but despite all of their efforts, it never showed any signs of even receiving a call. It was like it never even happened. Perhaps I just imagined it, my mind making up for some instinct that warned me of the danger. At least, I thought that until the next one came, and then the next one after that. Though infrequent, they were always right, and always saved my life.
Don't go on that blind date tonight.
I remember this one vividly. 5 months later, that date I would have been on was convicted for killing 4 people, all with my same hair color and build. Found in a shallow grave about 200 feet from the diner he offered to take me to.
Don't drive to that concert tonight.
Despite how much I had been looking forward to it, I listened. And as I got home, I saw on the news an 18-wheeler had lost control, barreling through a line of cars in a tunnel. Every single unfortunate soul lost in the wreckage. I knew that something supernatural was looking out for me. It didn't matter if I got a new phone, changed number, or even if the battery was dead. It always knew how to contact me. As I was sitting at dinner that night, out with some friends, we were talking about a cruise that we had planned. It had been so long since we had seen each other, and we were looking forward to a week in the tropics in the dead of winter, escaping the chill. Only something pulled at the back of my mind. I suppose you could say it was intuition. I could almost anticipate the call coming. But as dinner ended, it never came. Putting my phone into my pocket, I bid my friends farewell, and I drove home. As I unlocked the door, I pulled the phone out of my pocket to check. A friend said that they would call me once they were back, but then I noticed an unknown number and a missed call. The icon for a message left. It had never left a message before. I swore loudly. I had actually been looking forward to the cruise, despite my hesitations. I flipped through the notifications and turned the message on, putting the phone to my ear. Cold sweat suddenly forming on my back as the message played.
Do not come home after dinner tonight. Do not come home after dinner tonight.
Ooh, looks like that instinct might not quite have been on point. How unfortunate. Perhaps the next person might be a bit more vigilant. I don't know about you, viewer, but if I had a direct line to a death-defying otherworldly guardian, I'd be a bit more meticulous when it came to monitoring my messages. Oh, 1 second. It looks like I might have a missed call. Our next story comes from a little girl named Maddie and her sister, Annie. And it's about her and her sister's encounter with malevolence beyond their expectation. Because sometimes monsters come from where you least expect it. Maddie and Annie led a difficult life. Their mother falling to addiction, her physical and mental faculties decaying under the chemical strain. At one point, even her back teeth falling out. Young, innocent Maddie would collect these, keeping them in a matchbox under her bed, hoping that one day, with childish optimism, that she could piece her mother back together, like some broken doll. The two children lived in a dilapidated house, water damage scarring the ceiling, multiple members of the stairs to the second story falling victim to dry rot, while in the chilling winters, leaky radiators would bleed rust. It was Annie that raised Maddie in place of the absentee mother. seeing to her needs, caring for her even when Maddie objected, for their mother was unreliable. Her moods would wax and wane like the phases of the moon, depending on her chemical consumption. Only a little, bright and happy, close to the mother the two sisters held in their hearts yearning for. Not enough, morose, even violent. Too much, swimming in an ocean of mania. Such was the life of the two sisters. That is, until things changed in one chill October evening. Maddie was 13, Annie 16. It was a Wednesday night, and their mother had already been gone for 2 days. The sound of a ringing phone could be heard throughout the house until Maddie picked up the receiver, putting it to her ear. The slurring speech of her mother issued forth, wishing Maddie a happy birthday. A grimace crossed the young girl's face, and she hung up in frustration. Her birthday had been the day before. Annie had taken her younger sister to the beach to celebrate, riding the bus out to it and celebrating the occasion with just the two of them. But that was yesterday. Now the sisters were experiencing a spat. After returning home that night, Annie had fallen to the bottle, assaulted by the same demons that haunted and plagued their mother. It had been Maddie that had helped her to bed as the whiskey hung heavy on her breath, and then cried herself to sleep, neither speaking since waking that morning. Maddie withdrew into herself, spending the day immersed in a muted television until evening fell, and the smell of food wafting from the kitchen roused her from her introspection. The pains of hunger betrayed her attempts at isolation. Drawn to the kitchen, Maddie found Annie cooking dinner. Something their mother never did. Something that set the two women apart. As the plate was laid on the table, Maddie tore into it, forgiving her sister with every bite. The food filling their bellies, displacing the troubles of the past and worries, until a strange sound drifted from the backyard. A keening, almost childlike cry. Perhaps it was Mika, the neighbor girl, a bright if rather loud 2-year-old. Maybe she was throwing a fit loud enough to carry to the ears of the sisters. Or maybe one of the many neighborhood cats out begging for food not received from their neglectful owners. Either way, the two girls disregarded the sound and finished their dinner, smiling at one another as they got up from the table and moved from the kitchen to the back porch. Maddie and Annie sat together, the porch illuminated only by a weak string of Christmas lights, as the two gazed into the sky, picking out what stars could still be seen beyond the lights of the city. As the sisters stared at the constellations, another childlike wail washed over the night-shrouded backyard. This time, closer. Maddie stood up looking for the source, sure that it was Mika, having wandered over, her and Annie could collect the young girl, then call her mother Connie to let her know Mika had come over to play. As Maddie looked around in the dark, the strange voice of Annie came from behind her. "Mad, get inside. Get inside right now." Maddie turned to look at the gaze of her sister, noticing the wide, fear-filled eyes on Annie's face, and then following them. There, in the bushes, near the rear of the backyard, a figure crouched. Drenched in shadow, inhumanly thin, ragged, almost animalistic, face hidden in shadow, its seemingly too large mouth worked as if trying to speak, but only the childlike cry now coming forth, distorted. Its head snapped up as if sensing the attention of the girls, and began to unfold itself from its hiding place, rail-like legs carrying it towards them in stilted but deliberate strides. Maddie's gaze was broken from the approaching wraith as Annie's hands gripped her shoulders and pulled her towards the back door of the house. Annie fumbling with the handle, pushing Maddie inside and then quickly closing the door and locking it behind them. Maddie looked into her sister's eyes as Annie held her close, unable to turn around to see the door and whatever thing they had locked out. "Don't look, Maddie," Annie said to her sister as her eyes stared in terror, tears welling in them as they looked down at Maddie. "I'm going to call the cops. Everything's going to be..." Her voice faltered. "My phone. I left it on the porch." Annie's head whipped up as a tapping began softly on the glass of the back door. The tapping slowly increasing in force and frequency until it suddenly stopped. The girl shrieked as glass shattered, the monstrous figure bursting through the glass of the back door. In a burst of terror-fueled speed, the two girls bolted from the kitchen towards the upstairs, years of practice dodging the few rotten steps as they took refuge in the second-story bathroom, slamming the door behind them, followed by the noise of something gibbering as it scrabbled up the stairs behind them. A howl resounded throughout the house, along with the sounds of ripping fabric and smashing furniture. Annie looked into Maddie's eyes as they huddled in the bathroom. "I want you to stay here. I'm going to go get my phone. When I leave, don't open the door for anyone, not even me." Stifling the sobs that threatened to give away their hiding place, Maddie nodded fearfully, and on a quiet count of 3, Annie threw open the door and bolted out. Maddie slammed the door shut after her sister and locked it just as something threw itself against it, rattling the door in its frame and shaking the handle so hard a screw fell out and rolled along the floor as the thing unleashed an inhuman shriek of rage. Then all was silent until a sweet and sickly voice called out to Maddie. "Maddie, Maddie, honey, open the door. It's Mommy." "Mommy, is that you?" "Yes, Maddie. Just let me in." I'm sorry I missed your birthday. And then Maddie heard her sister's voice. Yeah, Maddie. Just let us in. The voice distorting and breaking down into a maddening giggle, followed by more shrieking as the door remained locked. Maddie's blood ran cold. All the stories of monsters and demons that children hope never crawl out from under their beds, flooding into her panic-stricken mind as terror gripped her soul. You're not my mother or my sister, Maddie wailed, hands over her ears as she braced herself against the violent shaking of the door for what seemed like an eternity. Even now, she could hear more voices coming, more shrieks, and then the crashing of violence as it seemed an army of demons flooded into the house. And then suddenly, the door gave. Maddie thrown to the floor. She screamed and screwed her eyes shut. She felt the claws grab her and waited for a painful end. And then she opened her eyes. The large man in blue, a shining shield on his chest, carrying her into the streets, blue lights flashing all around as Annie waited besides two more of his ilk. Diving into her sister's arms, Maddie turned to see the monster, now restrained, being escorted from the house. No, not a monster. The impossibly skinny and withered form of their mother in handcuffs. A week-long binge of indulgence coming to an end, leaving the woman's mind broken beyond even what the two sisters could ever hope to put back together. Truly a chilling tale to tickle the darkest corners of your mind in the late hours. We all want to believe that dangerous entities or supernatural evil lurk only in the halls of fiction or myth. But sometimes, real monsters can be found at the bottom of a bottle, or at the cliff-like end of overindulgence. Sometimes, monsters can be the ones that raise you, or the ones that's supposed to love you the most. But it's up to you to let them in. Have you ever remembered something from your childhood? Something that is defined but yet vague. You can't be sure of its veracity until you hear it from another. Well, our next story starts with a simple line on a forum post. Candle Cove local kids TV show. Does anybody remember this kids show? It was called Candle Cove. I must have been 6 or 7. I never found a reference to it anywhere, so I think it was on a local station. I lived in a small town at the time, but I don't remember which station, and I always remember that it was on at some strange time. It seems really familiar to me. I grew up in a different town, so I don't think it was local. It was about pirates, wasn't it? Oh my God, yes. I'm not crazy. I remember there was a character, Pirate Percy, but he was always odd, rather terrifying for a child show. like some sort of puppeteer Frankenstein, built from the pieces of other puppets. I'm sorry to resurrect this thread, but I know exactly the show you're talking about. I remember watching Cove. It only ran for a few months, and I used to watch it with my brother. It took place in Cove. It was about a little girl who thought that she was friends with pirates, who sailed around on a ship called the Laughingstock. I remember that Percy wasn't a very good pirate. He would always get scared, and there was always this eerie calliope music playing. I remember the Laughingstock now. The ship looked like it had a jaw and was always smiling. I remember how creepy it was. Whenever Percy was too scared to go somewhere, the camera would zoom in on the ship, and it would say, "You have to go inside." If that wasn't so bad, do you remember the villain of the show, Skin Taker? He was like some dirty skeleton marionette, always in a cape and a top hat. Now that I think about it, weren't both of them stitched up crazily? Were they supposed to be made from the skin of children? My God, I remember Skin Taker now. How was this a children's show? The puppet wouldn't even move its jaw right, just back and forth like grinding its teeth. And whenever the little girl of the show would ask him why he talked like that, he would say, "To grind your skin." I can't believe I found this post, and that I'm not the only person who remembers this show. I remember that there was one episode, and it just was the puppets screaming. It would cut to each of their faces, and then the little girl. She was crying and moaning like she had been through hours of this. It used to give me nightmares as a kid. Now that you mention it, I remember that episode as well. But why would they have one like that? No plot, just screaming. I'm not sure if I'm remembering it because you said it, but it seems so familiar. I couldn't take it. That was the last time I ever watched Cove. And then the post ends with this last update. I visited my mom today in the nursing home. I asked her if she remembered when I used to watch Cove as a kid. I had to make sure, just in case. She looked at me so surprised when I asked, and I asked her why. Her response, I don't think I'll ever forget. Because I used to think it was so strange that you said, "I'm going to go watch Cove now, Mom." And then you would sit there and look at the static for 30 minutes. You used to have such the imagination for your little pirate show. The human mind is a strange, nigh anomalous thing, and memories can sometimes not be quite what they seem, even if shared by others. Perhaps it's just a mistake on a mass scale, a time-fueled glitch in the matrix of the minds of the collective. Or maybe there's something unseen and more sinister at work. So I hope you enjoyed those 3 chilling creepypastas. It was quite a bit of frightful fun finding these few for my first foray into the genre, but were able to be weaved with my own wicked words. I hope you also enjoyed your first glance at my new ghoulish guide. Moving forward, I'll continue tapping into the collective consciousness of the Kabbalites to source sinister stories for new nightmarish narration. I also have my own spooky surprises in store, so if you want to be a part and stay updated, you can subscribe here on YouTube, follow me on Twitter, or, as April draws ever closer, follow me on Twitch. All of which are lurking in the links below. So until next time, Kabbalites, have you seen the violet sign?